Hello and welcome to the Constant State Podcast. I am Tyler the Tiger, and here with me is the Muffin Man, Mike Baker himself. And we have a wonderful guest today, and Megan Jensen, also known as MJ, knows Sitecore. Today we're going to talk a little bit about content strategy, dive into some content marketing concepts, and hopefully we'll get some insights from Megan that are exclusive to this podcast. No pressure. All right,
pressure.
Megan, how are you doing today?
I'm great. I feel like I should have come to the table with a cooler name or nickname than MJ Knows Sitecore, but I'll, maybe next time I'll get a, Iron Mike or a Tyler the Tiger next time.
Or the Muffin Man, Mike.
Or
Baker.
the Muffin Man. That's good too.
Yeah, I've been softened up a little bit from iron. From iron to a muffin. But
I kept thinking like, what's Baker, right? Like Baker.
Oh,
something. Yeah.
nice.
I was gonna say, Baker's dozen. That's not as good. So
you could be a content strategist with that line of thinking. Want a new job?
Right.
Yeah, we're big fans of wordplay here. So
excellent.
Yeah, and an ironic kind of turn here. With the baker part, my wife had a business where she made custom cakes, right? And her name is Gretchen, and her business was called Gretchen the Baker because her last name is Baker, but it ends up that it works perfectly, right? So.
Oh, that's really cool.
That's amazing. That's amazing. A friend of mine is a hairdresser, and her last name is Combs. So sometimes you're just meant to do what you're meant to do.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, let's dive into some stuff. Like, what's new in the world of content marketing? Do we want to kind of talk about what's fresh?
Yeah. A few years ago, everyone was kind of wringing their hands about the content crisis and the need for more content and more content. And I think we're kind of past that. And now we are at the dawn of the, oh my God, is AI going to take my job crisis? So, which I know a lot of us in our industry are kind of feeling, but it's kind of a new day for content altogether, and especially in the Sitecore world. In the last couple of years that they have come up with some really powerful, robust, scalable, easily manageable platforms, and a lot of them have to do with content management, whether that is text content or assets, that sort of thing. With the dawn of Content Hub DAM and CMP and Content Hub One, it's getting much easier for content teams to create, manage, govern, wrangle all of their content. So it's a lot to learn, but I think it's getting really easier for big organizations with just a plethora of content to keep their arms around stuff. So it's kind of a fun time to be in this line of work.
Nice.
Yeah, you mentioned AI taking your job. Like, how much of it right now is embracing AI versus pushing back against it?
I think I'm of the school of thought a lot of people are that we wanted AI to, wash our floors for us and, do our dishes for us, not do the fun creative part of living and being human. And writing, even if it's marketing copy, is part of that. And so I'm kind of on the side of let's not let the robots do the fun parts of our job, the creative, meaningful, the thing that makes us human. Let's not outsource that to the bots. But I mean, I have used AI for, ChatGPT if I'm, have some writer's block, that sort of thing, and I just need to get started. It's a really good kind of writing prompt tool to have to get you started, and then you can kind of take it and tweak it and make it what you want it to be. I would love AI to help us with the time-consuming, meticulous parts of our job that we all kind of hate. We all have that one thing that takes too long and you don't love to do it and it's kind of boring and it's really detail-oriented. I would love to have us work in a direction where it's replacing that part of our job, not the fun part. So, one example I would love to see is following brand standards. I've worked for a lot of companies where there are product names, there's brand names, there's the copyright sign, there's registered trademark signs, that sort of thing. And very often there's pages and pages of brand standards for writing. So the first time on the page, you have to use the whole name. It has to be capitalized. You have to use the trademark insignia. And then after that, it can be this. It would be great to write a piece of content and then run it through some sort of AI scanner that will catch and fix those things for you. So I'm not always going back to a PDF trying to remember, does this need, the TM or the R after the product name, that sort of thing. So if we can use AI for boring rather than AI for creative, I would be much more enthusiastic about it. But it's the direction we're going, and I think we're kind of in this scary precipice where it can kind of go either direction right now. It can either take all our jobs, or it can make all our jobs a lot easier, faster, and fun, and more productive. So I think it's up to us in the industry to kind of push in the direction that we want it to go. I think we have a lot more influence in how we use this new set of tools than we maybe give ourselves credit for. We're not a victim of circumstance. We can push back and push it in the direction that it needs to go.
For sure. I was just getting ready to say, like, we have a choice in that, how much we embrace AI. Now, some of that has to do with like in a super competitive industry, if other folks are leveraging AI more than we are and they're able to do stuff quicker, we have to kind of like weigh the pros and cons of, not embracing AI because we want to, stay true to that, creative side of us. So I know on the development side, Mike, we have tons of different AI tools, and I know we're going to get into AI stuff in a future episode. But when it comes to like getting started with writing something, I know I utilize ChatGPT and other things very heavily.
Yeah,
it's definitely good to leverage those kind of things and to not be scared and just use it to leverage. Right? It's there. You can't make it go away. So why not use it to like make your life easier?
Right. And I appreciate the way that Sitecore has started to integrate it into some of their products. I know that Content Hub DAM has had some AI functionality for a long time, and it's producing renderings of different sizes of images. It's in autofocus of, kind of the focal point of an image. It's tagging images with colors and that sort of thing. Like the stuff that like just takes a long time and it's just kind of work for work's sake. Heck yeah, let's let AI handle that part so we can create, we can write, we can, illustrate, we can build, and let it like be our assistant rather than the other way around.
Yep, agree, definitely.
For sure. If you're having to do some of that on your own and not AI, what would you say are some of those like best practices, particularly when it comes to authoring content within Sitecore?
Content strategy as a discipline is pretty broad and wide. And when I'm working on Sitecore projects, I try to lead with information first. Style, voice, brand standards, that will come when it comes. But if you start by really understanding your audience, your users, and what their intent is when they come to your website, where are they coming from? What are they looking for? What do they need to get done? How can we put the right information so in front of them that they stumble over it, And I've worked in marketing for a very long time, and no matter what my job has been, my title, the hat I'm wearing, whether it's raising money or recruiting doctors or selling siding, marketing is always getting just the right information to right just the right people at just the right time in just the right way. And that is what content strategy is. You want to provide what people want to browse and play with or learn from or look up or decide with, but do it in a way that doesn't feel like marketing at all, and don't make them work so hard for it. I really believe in accommodating the human brain and how it works, and not making people work so hard to do business with you. I study a lot of behavioral economics, and I really love just understanding how we as organisms, as learners, as doers, as creators, how have we evolved, and how can we create experiences digitally anywhere that works with us, not against us, and like I said, makes marketing not feel like marketing at all. Make it exceedingly easy to do business with our clients and customers. So that's kind of like the big, content strategy
Sure.
soapbox that I get on. and for as long as I've worked in marketing, we talk about personas, we talk about journeys, and all those things are really important. But I really like to focus on user intent. What are they trying to get done when they're on your site? And there's a few different ways of looking at that. I very often come back to this metaphor of waders, divers, and swimmers, especially on like B2B type websites. So our waders are kind of top of the funnel. They're browsing around. They're maybe looking at a lot of different brands, a lot of different websites. They're looking at kind of surface level things. How do things look? How how do they function? That sort of thing. They're browsing around quite a bit, and so they're willing to take more time on your website. They probably don't go super deep, but they're there for a while. You're gonna get some nice long engagement sessions on those, and then one step deeper, I like to think about swimmers. So they're kind of past that waiting, browsing level, and they're going a little bit deeper. So maybe they have an item that they like. Now they want to know, does it come in my size? Does it come in my color? Will this window fit in the window opening, in the opening that I have in my house? That sort of thing. Does this car come in 4-wheel drive? That kind of thing. They're kind of validating. They want a little bit more information so they can either decide to buy your product or use it a little bit better. And then kind of the deepest layer, I like to think of divers. So they're people that probably already own your product, probably already do business with you. They're in the middle of their workday. They're trying to get their stuff done. And they come to your website looking for a piece of information. It's maybe a product spec. It's troubleshooting. It's how do I fix this thing? How do I use this thing? And you might want to make it really, really easy for those divers to get in, find the piece of information they know they're looking for, and get out and get on with their days. So, this doesn't apply to every project I've worked on, but it applies to a lot of them. And if you can think of like accommodating those types of intent through content and putting it in the right place, information architecture is very, very important as well. That's a really good place to start. And then you can start building on that with personalization. How can you tell what intent your user has, and how can you silver platter just the right information to them when you know what they're looking for? So that's kind of the frame of reference I come with to a lot of my projects is information first, and then voice, tone, brand standards, that sort of thing, which is kind of the aesthetics of writing to me.
I think you also have to factor in the work that has to be done in order to get them there, because we're talking about like what needs to happen to get them to stay and then ultimately make a purchase, but what needs to happen to get them there with like SEO and keyword strategy, things like that.
Right. And, SEO and content strategy really go hand in hand. I don't believe in writing to SEO, keyword packing and that sort of thing, but doing your research thoughtfully so that you can go out there and find out what are people looking for, what terms are they looking for, are they searching for dungarees or jeans or denim or slacks? Use the terminology on your website that your users are typically using, and then make it really easy to find what they're looking for once they're there. So in a perfect world, when we're building a website, you have your content strategist and your UX, designer kind of at the table at the same time, so that you're developing the page structure and the site structure alongside the information that needs to be in different areas of the site. One of the hardest things to do is, start a project where a design agency has designed all these page templates and all these components, and here's your home page, and now you have to shoehorn content and information into the physical structure of the page. It's very cart before the horse and makes it really difficult. But it's also really important, kind of in the same vein, to have SEO and accessibility, because they're kind of cousins, threaded through the whole process as well, so that the content that you're writing, the way you're structuring your pages, the way that you are structuring your H tags within components, all makes sense, and you're not kicking yourself halfway through implementation that you should have done something differently.
Yeah, it's kind of funny you mentioned that. Like, thinking about like my experience previously, a lot of times we see design comps come across on a redesign, and then there's no thought process in the content. And like all these design comps make everything look perfect. They look great. And then in real life, you put them together they have like 5 lines of text that should be in a hero, and there's one, and it looks
Yep.
horrible. And then there's like a scramble to like make things work, and
Mm-hmm.
that happens all the time. Like that's a constant
Mm-hmm.
thing where people don't understand that relationship between the design and that content creation. You know, it has to be hand in hand.
Yeah. And we've had to push back to, it's really helpful to have your content strategist reviewing wireframes and design comps along with your UX designer and your front end developers, because I look at it through two lenses. So the end user, kind of perspective, is this going to make sense for them? Do they know exactly what to do next? You don't always have the budget for usability testing, so you really have to trust your gut and be willing to push back on that. And the other lens that I look at it through is the content author. So you can have these very, very beautiful, kind of sleek, sexy hero spots and that sort of thing. But then you start thinking ahead, okay, a year from now, the way this text is placed on this hero spot, they're going to have to find an image where the focal point is on the right every single time, or it's exactly in the middle every single time, or it has to be dark enough so this white text will show on top of it. So you really have to think about accommodating future content and future iterations of this. I mean, your homepage is never going to stay the same. So make sure that you are equipping the content author team with enough variance that they have a lot of flexibility later on to use the assets that they have. So maybe that's doing variance where text is in all four corners. You also have to make sure that you're accommodating mobile. So, if all of a sudden things are really small, is that title so long that it bleeds into the next tile, the next thumbnail, something like that. So there's a lot of things to take into consideration when, at first glance, a page design may be gorgeous, only useful for a very narrow set of images and content. And the other thing you have to consider is this going to be a multilingual website? Is it going to be expanded into other areas of the world? Are you, now working with languages that go right to left rather than left to right? If you're going to have a German site, you can guarantee that your words are going to be too long for the headlines that you originally planned for. So, my
Yeah.
job is to, really kind of advocate for our clients and for the people who are going to be managing content, not on this version, but the version a year from now, it's 18 months from now, are they going to have what they need to build, build the content into the designs that they have.
Yeah, it's kind of funny the going back to the language variation, and just past experience as well, right? Just kind of a funny story with like the German translation, and just my interpretation there is that the German words, they just don't fit in mobile. Like they're just, some of them are so
Yeah.
long that, and you can't hyphenate them or wrap them because it doesn't make sense. And it
Right.
becomes a big challenge, right? Like you really have to
Mhm.
think about those kinds of things in the content. Like,
Yeah.
is it an international site? Will you have these kinds of problems because you have to solve
Mhm.
those early?
Right. Yeah. Don't back yourself into a corner and try and plan ahead for all possible contingencies, for sure.
Right. Or even, going from right to left, like language reading, and
Mhm.
all those things
Oh,
really have to
absolutely.
be planned out.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think something worth pointing out too, going back to, looking through the lens of a content author. This is probably targeted towards more, Sitecore developers, but those of us who kind of play the part of the back end, but then also have to, mingle into that, muddy water of Sitecore, and putting together templates that are meaningful, putting together, things that would be edited in Sitecore that an author can come in and understand. And so sometimes, in the old world of Sitecore, when folks were kind of just interacting with page editor and the content editor and stuff like that, we were not really given the best interface to author content, but it looks promising now with things like XM Cloud Pages, where you have a much better interface. And all I'm really trying to say is that even Sitecore developers need to understand and look through that lens of a content author when they're putting this stuff together, because they're going to need to, content authors are going to need to understand what they're trying to put out there. And developers will need to understand that as well.
Yeah, it's definitely a balance between you giving flexibility and having the guide rails up so that you can't break it, but you still have flexibility to have like what you're saying, Megan, change the homepage 6 months from now because things change. You want to update, right? It's like You
Yeah.
need the flexibility, but the guide rails have to be there because someone will break it if you let them.
And one of the things that our strategy team really prioritizes is content author training. And so whether they're coming from another platform and doing Sitecore for the first time, or they're upgrading from 9.3 to 10.3, something like that, it's really important that they are super duper comfortable and confident with all the nooks and crannies that they may have to, work in once they own and really manage this website. And in the last year, we have actually been called in to do quite a few project rescue, project remediation, clients who have been working with another partner and then they, decide to work with Proficient. And very often you'll hear the marketing team say, we hate Sitecore. Well, and if you ask them why they hate Sitecore, page load speed is slow. It just takes a long time to get things done. The content editor is confusing. Experience editor is confusing, can be slow, can be glitchy. But very often it's because they were not properly trained on how to do things efficiently. And very often their site was not built and organized in a way that's going to make sense for content authors. So they'll have a page where we have never been able to make this component work right. Well, you weren't trained well, and we can fix it so that it's a little bit easier. But now that we've had a few XM Cloud projects under our belt and we've done lots of training and lots of demos, I tell you what, marketing teams are going to be really, really happy to go from kind of the old school content authoring process in XM and XP to XM Cloud, because let me tell you, Pages is slick, it's fast, it's intuitive. You can now build pages in minutes rather than hours, hours rather than days. And when you have a website that's hundreds or thousands of pages, that is a significant reduction in time and budget that it takes to get this stuff done. And very often it's the building pages that marketing teams kind of hate to do because it takes forever. And so it's been really fun to demo and train marketing teams on how to use the Pages interface, the components part where you can build components on the fly, you can build your own forms, and it's much more intuitive to quote unquote civilian users than XM and XP was. Like the learning curve is much shorter, especially if you're coming from a previous Sitecore version. It's fun. It's fun. It makes marketing fun again when you have a Sitecore site.
You mentioned being called in to do kind of like project rescue. What about like the times like when you're called into a project and maybe you feel inclined to encourage the marketing team to look at these pieces of content that have probably been there for a while. So like a lot of times you're coming in to work on something new, but what about things that are on their homepage or things that have just been there for a long time? That do you think that it's a good idea to encourage teams to audit their existing content and refresh it regularly?
Yes, all the time. Your text content, like your media library, can become a proverbial junk drawer if you're not constantly kind of weeding through it. We do a lot of audits with organizations looking for brand standards. This is still up to your brand. Is it still accurate? Is it still relevant? Is it something that you want people to find? Can it be archived? That kind of thing. And yeah, you can have content bloat really, really easily if you don't kind of constantly weed through that and take out the things that you don't need. Look for duplicates, that sort of thing. And I know that we've been talking a lot about, kind of text content, but with Content Hub, DAM, their digital asset management platform, the reduction in the time it takes marketing teams and design teams to create, upload, manage assets. We did a project for a company about a year and a half ago on Content Hub DAM, and the amount of time it took their design team to do website work was reduced by 80%. So not to 80%, by 80%, because like with renditions and things, they upload an asset one time and they're done, and it will get resized when it gets used. It's fine. And then just the overhead of duplicate assets. Do we already have this? Oh, I don't know. Let's create a new one. Now you have photography, you have graphic design, creating something you maybe already have. And then you can get into trouble too with copyright infringement. So there's a a digital rights management module that will help you keep track of your copyrights and usage rights and that sort of thing, so you don't get sued by, stockphoto.com, something like that. So, it's a bit of an investment in the actual platform and getting it set up just right for the right client. But the amount of efficiencies and time savings is kind of incredible and easily pays for itself.
That's awesome. I was going to say, damn, that's awesome. Had to throw in a damn joke, right?
We use the damn joke a lot in our line of work.
I'm sure it's been said many times. I wanted to bring up kind of content distribution too. I feel like a lot of times we just kind of treat social media as, someone else's job.
Yeah.
As something like, I think that, that's something that we also have to consider from a web perspective too. How is this content going to be shared? And is it going to be easily consumed by somebody who's visiting it from social media? Because let's be honest, that's how folks are getting to their content these days. Through search and through social media. So how does that kind of factor into your approach when you're working with a client?
Yeah. Our work rarely touches social media, but it's very much something that I keep in consideration. I consider a business's website like the axle in the middle of a wheel, and there's all these spokes coming out of it. And those spokes may be social media or newsletters or direct mail, email, text, all the other ways you converse with your users. And very often they kind of go in and out through your website to these different places. You do an email campaign, you typically send them to your website, that sort of thing. So it's really important that you're having one conversation with your clients or customers everywhere. So I really like the CDP and personalized products from Sitecore for this reason, because what it allows you to do is you start a conversation on your website, and as long as you know who that user is, now when they're on Instagram, you kind of know what they're interested in. If you are, triggering an email journey, it's probably based on some actions they took somewhere else in your ecosystem, text messages, that sort of thing. So the idea is to have one continuous conversation with your users, no matter where they are. And CDP is the mechanism that allows you to learn about your users and remember where you left off. So just because you start researching something on the website and you go to Instagram, remember what I'm interested in. Remember what I've been looking at. Show me the same information in a different way, in a more kind of engaging way, that sort of thing. So you shouldn't be starting a new conversation with every channel, every platform. It should be one continuous conversation no matter where they are. And so it's really important as website strategists to really understand the intent of the different social media platforms. I'm a woman in my 40s. I'm into all of them. I have 2 daughters in their 20s. So yes, I am on TikTok and Snapchat and all those places, because it's important for us, especially when you start doing personalization, to know that you have a different conversation on TikTok than you do on Instagram, than you do on Twitter, than you do on Facebook. There are different people there, and there are different purposes. You are shown different assets. You can get back different data points. You engage in a different way. You search and share and like in different ways. So even if those activities are happening on adjacent platforms to the website, it's really important to take them into consideration and know what's going on in all those other places too, so that it's a really cohesive umbrella strategy across all of those channels.
And how do you create that journey or that map to like the different social medias? Is there a tool they use, or is it just kind of developing the strategy from, like you said, the hub?
I wish I had a fancy schmancy tool. Content Hub 1 is really helping managing that content everywhere. So you can manage your website content and your social media content and your email journey content all in one place. So it's really easy to kind of have line of sight, especially if it's campaign related, and kind of have your analytics in one place, see how these conversations are going on one topic in all these different places. So Content Hub 1 is a really fun, useful tool as well to work alongside Content Hub DAM. They're a little bit different, but they work very well together. So that helps a lot. One of the things too that's nice about Content Hub 1 is typically within a bigger organization, your social media team is entirely different than your email team, which is different than your website team. So everybody needs to know what everybody else is doing and creating and sending out there, and to have all of that in one place so there's line of sight into all these different work streams is really helpful for bigger companies with bigger marketing teams.
Another thing that I wanted to bring up was kind of content governance, and something like, in these larger enterprises where folks, have full-on content teams and probably have different product areas and stuff like that come together on the website. Does that kind of factor into the larger kind of content strategy or strategy that you would have going to a client, and helping to encourage that there's proper governance, things like Sitecore workflow, making sure that, things don't get published that aren't supposed to be, there has to be some strategy around that. Right?
Everybody's worst nightmare is the site or the page that goes live that should not have gone live, didn't get looked over properly. Yeah, we really encourage, kind of a multi-point revision process to start out with. And Content Hub 1 can help with that as well, kind of manage it all in one platform. But then we're really, I don't want to say concerned, but it's a priority for us to make sure that the right people have the right permissions and the wrong people don't have the wrong permissions, and whether that's access to certain pages, publishing, that sort of thing, making sure that the right people have access to the right things and are super duper confident in how to use them, so that they're not scared about publishing, content. They're not scared of that button, because they're confident that they've followed all the steps and been properly trained on how to do it. Past that, a lot of times when we're talking about governance, we're really talking about brand management, voice, brand standards, tone, how does it sound, how do we talk here versus how do we talk there, that sort of thing. And that gets really more into kind of the creative end of writing, as opposed to kind of the more technical management side of it. But it's all important. It all needs to work together.
Yeah. Do you ever go to a client and you see like, oh, you have like 30 pages for this one topic? You should just have one, or like, does that?
Yeah.
Happens a lot.
It's like I feel like that has to be pretty common.
It is really common, and if we can come back with some like solid rationale, typically from an SEO standpoint and a user experience standpoint, we can find data to show what people are doing, what they're engaging with, where they're bailing on a website. So very often we can come with some data and rationale and best practices about why it's really better to do it this way. One of the things that I've learned in consulting, and I'm sure you guys have too, is, we have to be really diplomatic about how we suggest changes,
Always.
It's and sometimes someone on the team may have a real emotional investment in something that needs to change. Maybe it was their idea. Maybe they created it 5 years ago, and now we're saying we need to change their beautiful baby because it's not working very well. You really have to be diplomatic and gentle about how you do that, and reinforce that it's not a matter of taste. It's a matter of data and, best practices. And it's not because it was a bad idea. Good idea. It's just not doing the thing we thought we wanted our users to do. And I always treat marketing projects like science fair projects. Everything's a theory. Everything's something that needs to be tested. Sometimes you nail it on the first try or the first 5 tries. Sometimes you don't. And we have to fall back on user research, best practices, data to say, okay, we didn't quite hit the mark with our users. They didn't do the thing we needed them to do. Can we make an educated decision on what we need to change? Is it the location of the CTA button? Is it the words that we use on the page? Are they getting confused? Are they frustrated? Is this not the right piece of content? So content is kind of like the blood that courses through everything and kind of bleeds into everything, whether it's design, UX, development, SEO, everything. If you don't have the right information in the right place, it all kind of falls apart, and now you just have something that looks pretty but is not very useful.
Sure.
Yeah. So I'd say I think one key takeaway from this is, get to the point where we can like legitimately ask the question of, are you content with your content strategy? And going to a client and saying, what you have in place right now, are you content with it? Or do you think it's actually working? If not, talk to Megan Jensen.
Yeah. It kind of also leads to like a topic too that we see a lot is for us, like either we get projects that are complete redesign, brand new, fresh, right? Or we get what we call the lift and shift sites. And that's where like, are you really content with what you have and you just want to shift it over to something new? Like, I feel like you want to rebrand or reinvent something here.
Right. And, and I find that with, upgrades and lift and shifts too, like, are you really going to just build the exact same house on a new lot? You don't want to change the siding. You don't want new cupboards. Like, should we do a little something since we're doing the work anyway? And it's typically the best time, even if it's not a big fat rebrand. My goodness, that's a good time for a content audit. Make sure you're not putting your junk from one junk drawer into a new junk drawer to just become the new junk drawer. So yeah, it's a great time for teams to kind of evaluate what they've got on there, revisit their, SEO scores, make sure that they can, continue to maintain that organic traffic and that page rank, that sort of thing. So it's a really good time, just like moving house. Like, do we really want to keep everything in this drawer, or can we downsize a little bit and, maybe get something new in the end?
So you heard it from the expert. The Sitecore Strategy MVP says regularly audit your content. Work with an expert. Work with somebody who kind of does this, all the time. So don't be afraid to reach out to that consulting company. And this is not a sales pitch, but don't be afraid to reach out to that team of consultants that can help you through those content changes.
Yeah, and very often it's the neutral, objective, fresh set of eyes that will help you make better decisions, because we're looking at it fresh with no emotional investment in the words on the page, and we can help you make more kind of rational decisions on what stays and what goes.
Yeah, it's kind of also the content becomes the constant state, right? Always has to evolve, always has to update. It can't just stay static in one place. Has to be always growing and learning and moving forward.
Exactly. I preach a lot about the care and feeding of your website. The day it launches is the day you begin. It's not the day that you end a project, because you need to keep that baby alive. You need to keep watching the numbers. You need to keep it fresh and interesting and relevant, and never let it get stale. That's the worst thing you can do, because you are not making the best of the investment that you just made in your website. And you're probably letting down your users too.
That's a great perspective, because we've talked about being in a constant state of learning and growing as individuals, and now we're talking about letting your website, letting your product be in that kind of constant state of adapting to changes within the product, changes within your audience and your customers, and learning from that in order to provide more value to your customers. So I think that's another key takeaway.
Yep, for sure.
All right. Well, I think that we're out of time for today. Megan, thank you so much for joining us today on this episode. And Mike, as always, great insights from the Muffin Man himself. And Megan, any last thoughts?
It's an exciting time to be working in content. So keep your ear to the ground and make sure you know what's the latest and greatest. And don't let your site go stale. It's the worst thing you can do. And we can help.
All right.
That's right. And just always remember, stay constant, stay learning, and stay curious.